Why does her silence hurt you more than her goodbye? Stay. Because if this already feels like a wound you cannot name, the answer lies far deeper than heartbreak. It touches the roots of who you are, the shadow of who you've been, and the archetype of every woman you've ever longed for but never truly understood. Silence is not absence. It is presence without permission. It is the weight of everything unsaid, pressing against the walls of your mind. A goodbye gives you something to hold, a door that closes, a funeral you can mourn, but silence is a mirror. It reflects your unfinished business back at you, and it will not blink first. This is why her silence haunts you. Not because she is gone, but because part of you remains unfinished inside her absence. In the language of Jung, she carries your anima, the feminine image inside you, the doorway to soul and meaning. When she withdraws into silence, she does not simply leave the room. She takes with her the illusion that love was your completion. And without that illusion, the boy in you trembles. The man in you fractures. You feel it as panic, as anger, as a desperate need to understand. Did she stop caring? Was I not enough? Will she ever come back? But the real wound is older than her. It is the echo of a mother's face turned away, of childhood longing unmet. You are not grieving this woman. You are grieving every silence you have ever survived. To the feminine, silence is instinct. When her soul senses danger, not physical, but emotional danger, she does not always run. She retreats inward. It is the withdrawal of tides, the quiet closing of the temple gates. Sometimes she is silent to protect herself. Sometimes she is silent to protect you. And sometimes, though she will never say this aloud, she is silent because she no longer wishes to carry what you refuse to face. Her silence is not only absence of sound, it is the voice of everything unspoken between you, the words you swallowed, the feelings you numbed, the shadow you both denied. You might think if she just said something, anything, you could fix it. But listen closely. The silence is saying everything. It is telling you that you are addicted to resolution, that you cannot tolerate uncertainty, that you crave control because you fear the void. In Stoic thought, the void is life's teacher. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But you confuse her silence with punishment, when it is simply proof that you never controlled her soul. You never could. And this truth terrifies you, because beneath every man's longing to be chosen is a deeper terror of being abandoned. You replay every memory. You dissect every moment. You search her absence like scripture, desperate for clues. But this obsession is not love. It is possession in disguise. What you miss is not her, but the part of you that felt whole in her presence. Silence exposes this illusion. Goodbye still lets you dream she might return. Silence leaves you with nothing to hold but yourself. And here is the hidden truth you fear most. You do not yet know how to hold yourself. Because to hold yourself, you must face the shadow she awakened, the part of you that measures worth by being wanted, the part of you that confuses being seen with being loved, the part of you that mistakes intensity for intimacy. This is why her silence hurts more than her goodbye. Goodbye is an ending. Silence is a mirror, and mirrors do not lie. So stay with this ache. Do not numb it. Do not chase her voice. Feel the hollowness. Listen to what it reveals about you. Because in this silence lies your initiation, your descent into the underworld of your own soul, where the boy dies and the man begins. The silence is not punishment. It is invitation, not to win her back, but to finally meet yourself. But you are not ready to hear this yet, not until you see the deeper pattern, the ancient wound she unknowingly touched, the reason her silence echoes so loudly in your chest. To understand that, you must step into the cave where your earliest longing still sleeps, where the boy first learned what love costs and what silence means. The cave is not made of stone. It is built from memory, fractured, hazy, half forgotten, a child's heart pounding in a room too quiet, a voice calling for comfort, met with nothing but closed doors and shadows moving down the hall. Before there was her, there was this. Before the silence of a woman, there was the silence of the one who first taught you love. The psyche remembers what the mind denies. You may not recall every detail of those early years, but your nervous system does. Every time she withdraws, every time she turns away, your body floods with the same ancient terror. I am alone. I am unseen. I am not enough. You think you are responding to her, but you are responding to a ghost, an old wound wearing a new face. Carl Jung called this the complex, a living knot of emotion that shapes the way you love, the way you ache, the way you chase. You think you are free, but the complex chooses for you. It pulls you toward the very people who echo your earliest pain, not to harm you, not to punish you, but because your soul is trying to complete a story that was never finished. This is why you fall for women who feel like home, even when home was chaos. This is why her silence feels unbearable, because once, long ago, silence meant danger. Silence meant you had to earn love, perform for it, beg for it, bleed for it. And so you learned to chase, to over-explain, to apologize for existing, to grip love tightly, hoping it wouldn't slip through your shaking hands. But the feminine, in her truest form, cannot be gripped. She is not a thing to be possessed. She is a tide, an ocean, a mystery that refuses captivity. The more you clutch, the more she retreats. Not because she is cruel, but because her nature calls you to rise, not grasp, to meet her in wholeness, not in hunger. Yet hunger is what you know, and so you misinterpret her silence. You call it rejection when it is protection. You call it punishment when it is reflection. You call it abandonment when it is the first invitation you've ever had to stand alone. Stoic philosophers understood this paradox. Freedom begins where control ends. The pain of her silence is not that she left, but that she revealed you were never holding her at all. This is why the silence feels endless, because the battle is no longer between you and her. It is between you and the boy inside you who still waits for someone to come back. You have lived your life waiting for the apology that never came, waiting for the parent to finally see you, waiting for love to heal what childhood broke. Her silence reopens this waiting, but this time there is no one coming to rescue you. There is only you and the mirror of your own need. This is where most men collapse. They rush to fill the void, new women, new distractions, new escapes. But the void does not go away, because the void is not outside you, it is you. To descend into this cave is to face death, not of the body, but of the self you built around longing. The self who believes love is earned through suffering. The self who measures worth by being chosen. Her silence strips this illusion bare. It forces you to meet what Marcus Aurelius called the inner citadel, the part of you that cannot be broken by anyone's presence or anyone's absence. But before that rebirth comes, there is rage. The boy in you will fight. He will scream, accuse, bargain. He will turn her silence into a villain, because villains are easier to hate than mirrors are to face. And in that rage, you may destroy what could have been healed. Not because you are cruel, but because you are terrified. Terrified of the truth. Silence reveals you have never known yourself apart from being wanted. This is why silence cuts deeper than goodbye. Goodbye offers closure, even if it wounds. Silence offers nothing, forcing you to discover if you have anything left inside. Do you? Can you bear the sound of your own heartbeat without needing it to echo in someone else's chest? Can you survive being unseen and still see yourself? If you cannot, her silence will break you. But if you can, it will awaken you. The awakening begins when you stop asking, why is she silent? And start asking, what does this silence reveal about me? To answer that question, you must follow the silence deeper, past longing, past anger, past bargaining, into the moment you finally see her not as savior, but as soul. And when you see her soul, you will see your own. You always thought love was about finding someone who stays. But the deeper truth, the one few dare to speak, is that love is about who you become when they leave. When she goes silent, your mind screams for answers. Was it something you said? Something you didn't do? You cling to the hope that if you can decode her silence, you can bring her back. But the silence is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a threshold to be crossed. Carl Jung taught that every relationship is a meeting of souls, but also a meeting of shadows. What you love in her is often what you repress in yourself, and what you resent in her is the part of you you cannot bear to face. Silence forces this confrontation. It removes the illusion of dialogue and leaves you alone with the reflection she stirred awake. And here is the paradox. Silence is her way of speaking the truth you refused to hear. Her goodbye would have been kind. It would have allowed you to cast her as villain or victim and move on. But silence does not let you escape. It lingers, it gnaws, it keeps you up at night, not because of what she did, but because of what she revealed. She revealed your dependence, your craving for reassurance, your belief that love must constantly affirm your worth, or it cannot be trusted. And this, though painful, is sacred. Because without silence, you would never see the cage you live in, a cage not built by her, but by your own hunger to be completed by someone else. Alan Watts once said, "You don't look out there for God, something in the sky. You look in you." The same is true for love. You do not find completion in her presence. You find completion in your ability to remain whole in her absence. This is what the silence demands. Not your panic, not your pursuit, but your presence. Can you sit in stillness without reaching? Can you meet the ache without numbing it? Can you hold yourself the way you wanted her to hold you? Most men cannot, because most men confuse love with escape. Escape from loneliness, escape from self-doubt, escape from the quiet truth that without her, they do not know who they are. But this truth, as brutal as it feels, is your doorway to awakening. The silence strips away illusions, the illusions that love should always feel safe. That being chosen means you are worthy, that someone else's presence will finally fix what childhood left undone. In the absence of her words, you begin to hear the whispers of your own soul, whispers that have been drowned out for years by noise, by pursuit, by distraction. And what do those whispers say? They do not say chase her. They do not say hate her. They do not say beg her. They say see her, not as savior, not as enemy, but as mirror. In seeing her as mirror, the projection dissolves. The mother wound you cast onto her face dissolves. The craving to possess her dissolves. And for the first time, you see her as she is, a soul walking her own path, answerable not to your need, but to her own becoming. This is where real love begins. Not in clinging, not in chasing, but in releasing the illusion that you were ever owed her voice, her answers, her return. Silence invites you to stop demanding closure from her and start finding closure within yourself. The Stoics taught that suffering is not caused by events, but by the story we tell about them. Her silence is not cruelty. Your story about it is. Rewrite the story and the pain transforms, from abandonment to initiation, from heartbreak to awakening. But awakening does not happen overnight. It begins slowly, like dawn breaking through the cracks of a long winter night. You begin by sitting in the quiet, noticing the way your body tenses, the way your mind grasps. And then, breath by breath, you soften. You realize the silence was never hers to give. It was always yours to face. Yet something deeper waits beneath even this. A revelation not just about her, but about the nature of love itself. Why silence wounds so deeply. Why goodbye feels lighter, and why the feminine disappears when the masculine forgets who he is. To see that truth, you must descend further, into the deepest chamber of the cave where longing and freedom meet. Deep in the cave, the silence changes. It is no longer sharp or suffocating. It becomes heavy, almost holy, like standing in a cathedral after the congregation has gone home. The echoes of every prayer linger, but no one is left to answer. This is where truth waits, not on the surface, where longing screams, but in the depths, where longing dissolves. The truth is this: her silence was never about you, not in the way you think. Yes, she withdrew. Yes, she vanished without words, but silence is not always rejection. Sometimes silence is protection, hers and yours. Sometimes silence is the soul's way of saying what words cannot. You believe her silence hurts because it withholds closure, but what if closure is the lie? Closure implies that love is something you can finish, like a book you set back on the shelf. But love does not end. It transforms, it reveals, it breaks what must be broken so something truer can emerge. Carl Jung wrote that the feminine is not meant to complete the masculine, but to awaken it. Her silence does not abandon you. It initiates you into manhood, into presence, into the fire of becoming whole. And yet, most men resist this fire. They flee back into distraction, into conquest, into numbness. They blame the woman for the wound, never seeing that she merely touched what was already fractured. This is why so many repeat the same cycle. Different faces, same ache, different goodbyes, same silence. Until they finally listen, until they stop running from the mirror. To listen is to hear what the silence is really saying. You are not broken, but you are unfinished. You do not need her voice to find yourself. The love you seek is not hers to give. It is yours to claim. But this awakening is not soft. It is not romantic. It is not the cinematic redemption where she comes back, tears in her eyes, whispering that she always loved you. No, this awakening happens in the stillness after she's gone, when no one is watching, when there is nothing left to prove. It happens when you stop asking, will she return? And start asking, who am I when she does not? The Stoics would call this freedom. Freedom from needing what is beyond your control. Freedom from begging reality to be anything other than what it is. Epictetus wrote, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Her silence is one of those things. You cannot force her to speak. You cannot demand her explanation. You cannot drag closure out of her chest. But you can face yourself, and that is the only freedom worth having. Silence reveals a deeper wound, your war with uncertainty. You were raised in a world that worships answers. Certainty feels like safety, but love, real love, does not live in certainty. It lives in surrender. The feminine at her core is mystery. She is ocean, not map. You do not solve her. You learn to sail her tides. But if you cannot sit with mystery, you will always mistake silence for threat. You will always chase control instead of connection. And in chasing control, you will lose both. There is a reason goodbye hurts less than silence. Goodbye is final. It lets you grieve. It tells you what to feel. Silence asks you to feel without instruction, to stand naked in the unknown, to trust what you cannot name. This is harder than heartbreak. It is ego death. And yet, in that death, something miraculous happens. When the craving for answers burns away, what remains is presence. What remains is you, raw, unmasked, awake. You begin to see her not as an object of longing, but as a soul with her own sacred path. You begin to see yourself not as abandoned, but as invited to grow, to hold, to stand. In this shift, the silence stops hurting, not because it changes, but because you do. The descent is nearly complete, but before rebirth, there is one final passage, the reckoning with your own shadow, the confrontation with the part of you that would rather stay broken than risk becoming whole. Only by meeting that shadow can you rise into the man the silence was always calling you to be. The shadow does not announce itself. It hides in the quiet corners of your longing, whispering things you pretend not to hear. It says, if she loved you, she would never leave. It says, if you were enough, you wouldn't feel this ache. It takes her silence and twists it into proof of your unworthiness. Carl Jung warned that the shadow, the parts of us we repress, does not disappear when ignored. It surfaces in projection. You see it in her eyes, though it belongs to you. You accuse her of abandoning you, but the deeper truth is harsher. You abandoned yourself long before she ever could. This is why silence feels like death, because it forces you to face the emptiness you have been avoiding. It strips you of distraction, of noise, of stories you tell to soothe yourself. And what you find in the quiet is not her absence, but your own. The boy you were learned love in fragments. He learned to perform for affection, to trade authenticity for belonging, to believe love was conditional and safety was temporary. When she falls silent, the boy panics. He scrambles to win her back, to restore the illusion that he is enough. But this moment is not meant to save the boy. It is meant to bury him. The man cannot awaken until the boy is laid to rest. This is the secret pain of masculine growth. The funeral no one attends, the death of the self that begged for love instead of embodying it. Alan Watts often spoke of ego death, the quiet dissolving of everything you thought you were. He compared it to falling backward into water, terrifying at first until you realize you are buoyant. Her silence is that water. You resist it, thrash against it, fear it will swallow you whole. But if you let go, if you trust the descent, you discover you were always held. Not by her, by something deeper, by life itself. The Stoics knew this too. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to sit in fear without running." Her silence asks for that bravery, not to win her back, but to win yourself back. This is the threshold. Few cross. Most stay stuck in the loop, blaming her, chasing her, replacing her. They never enter the silence. They never meet the shadow. They never become free. But you, if you are still listening, still breathing, still here, you are ready. Ready to stop demanding answers, ready to stop bargaining with ghosts, ready to face the part of you that still aches to be chosen. Not to destroy it, but to hold it, to finally give that boy what no one else ever gave him, your own unwavering presence. And here lies the quiet miracle. When you hold yourself, her silence no longer feels like abandonment. It becomes neutrality, then compassion, then gratitude. Because without her silence, you would never have looked this deeply. You would never have descended this far. You would never have met yourself. This is the beginning of individuation, Jung's path to wholeness, not perfection, not eternal bliss, but integration. The boy and the man shake hands. The shadow is no longer an enemy, but a guide. The feminine is no longer an idol, but a mirror. You stop chasing completion outside yourself and start embodying it within. Love changes here. It softens. It deepens. It becomes less about possession, more about presence. You can love her freely, without gripping, without fearing, without needing her silence to break, because you have learned to listen in ways words cannot teach. In this space, even if she never speaks again, you are whole. Even if she returns, you are whole. Even if she forgets your name, you are whole. This is the freedom her silence was always leading you toward. Not the freedom from pain, but the freedom to hold pain without collapsing under it. Not the freedom from longing, but the freedom to love without losing yourself. There is one final truth, the quiet revelation that completes the journey. It is not about her or even about silence. It is about the hidden gift waiting on the other side of heartbreak. The gift is not reunion, it is resurrection. Resurrection is not loud. It does not arrive with fireworks or applause. It begins in stillness, a quiet moment when you notice that the ache you carried has become lighter, not gone, but different. It no longer crushes you. It teaches you. This is the quiet power of silence. It reshapes you from the inside out, slowly, relentlessly, until one morning you wake and realize you no longer need her voice to feel alive. Goodbye gives you closure. Silence gives you rebirth. But first you must understand what truly died. It was not love. Love never dies. It only transforms. What died was the illusion that someone else could complete you. What died was the story that worth must be earned through being wanted. What died was the boy who begged at the gates of love, never realizing the key was already in his pocket. Carl Jung spoke of the self, the unified center beyond ego and shadow, where masculine and feminine finally meet. This is the place her silence was guiding you toward, not to her, but to yourself. The feminine silence is archetypal. Across myths and cultures, it is the sacred withdrawal. In Nana's descent, Persephone's abduction, Mary's quiet at the cross. The silence of the feminine is not absence, it is initiation. It calls the masculine into depth, into stillness, into becoming worthy of carrying love without clinging to it. You thought silence was rejection, but silence is how the feminine tests the masculine. Not through games, but through archetype. Can he hold the void? Can he remain grounded when when the winds of emotion strip away certainty, can he stay present even when unseen? This is what separates boy from man, not conquest, not bravado, but presence in the face of silence. Alan Watts would call this the dance. The feminine moves away, the masculine remains still. The ocean recedes, the shore waits. No grasping, no panic, just trust in the rhythm of tides. The Stoics would call it equanimity, the ability to remain unshaken by what you cannot control. Epictetus reminded us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretations of them. Her silence is not cruelty. It is your interpretation that wounds you. When you release the story, the wound dissolves. And in this release, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see her as she truly is, not savior, not betrayer, but soul, a being walking her own labyrinth, carrying wounds you may never understand. You realize love is not possession, but reverence, not holding, but witnessing. And in seeing her clearly, you see yourself clearly too. You are no longer the boy chasing love, nor the man resenting silence. You are presence itself, whole, rooted, alive. The silence does not vanish. It no longer needs to. This is the paradox of rebirth. You no longer crave what you once thought essential. You stop asking, will she return? And start asking, what will I create from here? The answer may surprise you. You may choose solitude, not as escape, but as sanctuary. You may choose love again, not out of hunger, but out of overflow. You may choose to walk alone for a season, trusting that those meant for your path will meet you on it. Her silence becomes the turning point, not the tragedy. It becomes the moment you learn that love's greatest gift is not being chosen, but learning to choose yourself. And this is the essence of masculine individuation, not hardness, not control, but a soft strength that cannot be broken by absence or noise. A strength born of facing the deepest wound and finding at its center not emptiness, but soul. The journey is nearly complete. Only one truth remains, the final release. The moment when silence no longer hurts because you no longer need it to speak. The moment you understand that goodbye and silence were never the real story. The real story was always the return, not of her, but of you. Return is not what you expect. It is not dramatic. It does not feel like victory. It feels like peace, so quiet you almost do not notice it at first. But there it is, the absence of urgency, the soft exhale you thought would never come. The silence no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like space, room to breathe, room to see. This is the culmination of every myth. The hero descends into darkness, faces the shadow, and emerges with treasure. But the treasure is not gold. It is presence. It is wholeness. You are no longer seeking love to fill you. You are carrying love wherever you go. Carl Jung called this individuation, the marriage of opposites within. The anima and animus no longer at war. The boy and man no longer divided. The inner feminine embraced, the outer feminine honored. This is why her silence no longer wounds you, because you are no longer demanding she complete the parts of you you have now reclaimed. Goodbye would have closed the chapter. Silence opened the entire book. You see it now. Her silence was never punishment. It was invitation. Invitation to step into the masculine depth you secretly always longed to embody. Invitation to stop performing for love and start radiating it. Invitation to finally meet yourself. Alan Watts once said, when you let go of clinging to what you love, it does not vanish. It becomes what it truly is, free. And so it is with her, and so it is with you. The Stoics too would nod in quiet agreement. Freedom is not found in bending the world to your will, but in aligning your will with the world. You cannot force her to speak. You cannot undo the silence, but you can choose what you make of it. And in that choice, you discover the freedom you once begged her for. This is the rebirth, the moment the man steps forward from the ashes of the boy. You no longer fear being unseen because you have learned to see yourself. You no longer fear being unloved because you have learned to love yourself without condition. You no longer fear silence because silence has become your teacher. From this space, even if she returned tomorrow, you would meet her differently, not with hunger, but with presence. You would no longer grip her soul like a lifeline. You would hold it with reverence, knowing it was never yours to own, only yours to witness. And if she does not return, you are still whole. Because love is no longer tied to her face, her voice, her silence. Love has rooted itself in you. This is the final lesson. Real connection cannot come from desperation. It is born when two whole souls meet, not to complete each other, but to celebrate each other. The boy thought love was rescue. The man knows love is recognition. Recognition of the soul across the table. Recognition of the shadow that made you. Recognition of the silence that shaped you. In that recognition, you finally understand why her silence hurt more than her goodbye. Because goodbye closed the door. Silence opened a mirror, and mirrors do not lie. The man who emerges from this silence is not hardened by loss. He is softened by truth. He walks differently, not lighter, not heavier, but steadier. His worth no longer hangs on another's approval. His heart no longer bargains for belonging. He belongs to himself. This man can love freely, without fear, without grasping, without losing himself in the tide. This man can sit with silence, not as punishment, but as prayer. And perhaps one day he will thank her, not for leaving, not for staying, but for doing the only thing that could awaken him, saying nothing at all. What once felt like loss now breathes like liberation. She no longer waits to be seen. She sees herself, and that changes everything. And in that silence, she finally hears it, the sound of her own soul returning home.